Which wide receivers are going to have breakout years in the National Football League and for your fantasy teams? We're discussing him today, and we're discussing Allen Lazard. Matt, I was looking up and writing about Allen Lazard, right? And I was looking at his average draft position. It'll make your damn head spin when you consider this is pretty much the top target. I know there's reports that Julio Jones could land with Aaron Rodgers like that. Well, for who? For what? I'll go Ricky Waters on you there. But Allen Lazard's average draft position is so damn low, it makes it pretty damn tempting for fantasy GMs out there. I'll look at the most current of current ADPs that we have. And when you look at Lazard, wide receiver 52, 1107. Seriously, wide receiver 52, 1107 for a guy who, a nice wide receiver too. Hell, a flex play if you're pessimistic. Why is Lazard's ADP so low, and could he be a breakout receiver in 2022?
I kind of have mixed feelings about Lazard because certainly Aaron Rodgers likes him a lot and says that he's going to be our wide receiver one this year, at least in training camp. And training camp is kind of like the time where, or this time of year is the time where we often talk about our hopes and dreams and how we'd like to, buy a castle out by the sea, after we win the lottery, and lose 80 pounds and get those abs that you see on magazines and things like that. And I think Allen Lazard kind of qualifies in that regard because Lazard to me is a smart player. He's a player who does know how to get open in zones. He can win contested catches. He's physically tough. But is he really that guy that is going to turn back time to back to the 90s where you can have somebody just out muscle people for the football and not be able to run great timing routes on the perimeter against top cornerbacks? Because if you don't have those types of players who are experienced, who can handle those types of defensive backs, then they're going to just plaster the best guy on Allen Lazard. And from all I've seen over the past couple of years with Lazard is that they get him open by motioning him around in trip sets where he gets paired with a linebacker or a safety or a corner who just forgets who he's supposed to be on and covers somebody else, and Lazard is running free. And I've shown videos of this in one of my recent gut checks on scheme players. He's a scheme player. He's a guy that they have to create plays to get him into open space rather than saying, you're the guy who's going to go one-on-one against their best defender and he's going to win it, and we're going to target you no matter what. Jordy Nelson was a good example of a player that they could do that with. And while Lazard can catch the back shoulder plays, he's really not that matchup receiver, in that sense. So I think he has wide receiver 3 upside, and at wide receiver 52, he's still a value.
Yeah, and last year he was number 42 in standard scoring leagues. So then the conversation becomes, if he is a matchup guy, as you say, and he is, Matt, well, what does that mean, and how quickly can we see the development of the guy that's going to be opposite of him, of the guy that everyone's excited about in Christian Watson? Because I know Sammy Watkins has actually gotten some buzz, which is kind of funny. I'm like, seriously? We don't have anything else to talk? Baker Mayfield just got traded, okay? You got something to talk about now, but like the Sammy stuff is weird. But the Christian Watson thing becomes like, if Watson can be what some think he could be pretty quickly, then Lazard can go back to being that matchup guy. Because defense, it'll take probably about 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks usually is when there's some sort of breakout. Defenses will adjust. So I think Watson needs to be tied into this Lazard conversation as well, because if he's good and if he's good fast, teams will adjust and Lazard will go back to getting one-on-one.
We're going to have one of those weeks, I think, you and me with this one, because like the Sammy one to me, like, is a guy that he's free money right now. And the joke is like, can you rely on him to stay healthy? But you're not drafting him in like the 10th round or in the in the 8th round or the 6th round. You're drafting him in the 18th round if you're drafting him at all. And Sammy Watkins, whenever he's played at least 14 games, he's been a fantasy starter in just about any league that you would put it in, other than 2 wide receiver leagues. And even then, he's had 2 wide receiver 2 value, even borderline wide receiver 1 value. So when he's healthy and when he's the focus of the offense, he can be a very skilled player and he can play inside out for you. So for me, he's that guy that you go, well, if it's not Allen Lazard, who's the matchup player? Well, Sammy Watkins, the same guy who basically torched, was able to torch, opposing defenses in the playoffs for the Chiefs when they didn't really have a healthy Tyreek Hill, or they decided to focus on him a little bit, use him a little bit more as that third option in that offense. In this offense, Christian Watson, as much as I like him, I think he's a great dynasty value. He's one of the primary picks that I really like. And you got to remember that Allen Lazard finishing wide receiver 2 is because when you have Devontae Adams as wide receiver 1, that creates those matchups for you.
Oh, yeah.
So when you start talking about the stats of guys finishing down the line, it's like saying Gabriel Davis, he blew it up in the playoffs. But, when you look at the scheme and how that works, he was still the third option. It was just that Josh Allen was able to find the third option on a lot of plays where defenses said, we're going to bet that we can reach Josh Allen before you can reach Gabriel Davis. And they lost multiple times as a result of that. But, the idea of Gabriel Davis, and I'll get back to Watson, but the idea of Gabriel Davis being a 1,500-yard player, I think in terms of what he can do, is I did this for Cecil, to be honest. I went
yes,
but
yes.
We did
wild hair.
His hair is better than mine, but I'm Russell Crowe lost at sea right now. But but really, back to Watson. Watson is a skilled player, and in terms of what he did coming out of college, but in order to be on the same page with Aaron Rodgers in terms of all the tags that pro offenses use post snap, where post snap he has to see how a safety adjusts, how the cornerback drops, and determine whether he's running one route or another, is a little more complex, and it takes longer usually, especially from a guy who may have played in a West Coast offense at North Dakota State, but is now making a huge jump conceptually. And he's facing even better opposition one-on-one to do it. So I like his potential. And if he can, and if we see that he's really getting it together in camp, I may elevate him. But to me, if I'm looking at another receiver in this offense, other than Allen Lazard, then it's going to be Watkins cheap, because if he just does what Sammy Watkins does, everybody makes jokes about, which is gets hurt and disappears, then you only spent an 18th round draft pick or a free agent waiver wire on the guy. And then Allen, obviously Tunyon is a reliable guy. And Amari Rodgers, while he didn't do anything as a rookie, Randall Cobb is talking about him as, this is a guy whose light is starting to turn on. We see that. That's one of the things that he mentioned.
He could be the new Cobb eventually.
And that's who I compared him to. And if a new Cobb, if we remember, Cobb was that guy for a while who could give you 1,100 yards and 8 to 10 touchdowns and play inside outside. And to me, I would look more towards the veterans in this group than I would look immediately at Christian Watson, unless it's dynasty.
Brandon says Lazard might just be a dad bod.
Well, some people like dad bods, they say. I don't know. That's how dads are dads. I mean, that's what do you want me to say?
I suppose, but before my weight loss, I was like, it's just a dad bod, and now I'm like, no, it wasn't. And what's really cool and interesting, and I want to pull the curtain back for everyone. Like, we don't do a bunch of discussion about like good cop, bad cop type of the things. And in radio specifically, I know a lot of people that do. I know a lot of people that do the show before the show. Matt and I show up and talk. So whereas I like Lazard, and Matt, you admit that his value at his current ADP, his ADP is lower than it was last year, and those touchdowns will be a big reason why. If he gets 8 again, he's probably another wide receiver 4, you know what I mean? Deep flex play. If he gets 10 or 12 now, and instead of 50 catches, you get 60, 65, just for sheer volume purposes because of Watkins' injury history and no Devontae Adams. So I think it's a great discussion, and it's fun because this is like our road trips to Mobile.
Sure.
Which, I hope we get back to, or to Vegas for the Shrine Bowl.
Right.
But either way, like, we just jump in the car, and it's so cool because I have my thoughts about the rookie class. You have your thoughts about the rookie class, of course, from your deep studying for the rookie scouting portfolio. And then we just jump in and we just start talking about it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I felt about today's show. Sigmund Bloom is on assignment. So I was like, we're just going to jump in and talk about these wide receivers. And that's why when you bring up Lazard, you're like, it's going to be one of those days. I was like, good. That's good radio right there. Or podcasting, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, to me, I joke. We used to joke way back in the day, about Gene Bramwell saying he couldn't quit Mark Ingram, back in the days when Ingram wasn't anything in New Orleans. Well, there's part of me that can't quit Sammy Watkins. And at this price, why would I? So that's kind of the thing is like, they need a guy who can be that matchup that they can move around. Lazard's more of a scheme player to me. And to me, scheme players need the help of other players and the scheme to really maximize it. To me, Noah Fant was a perfect example of a scheme tight end, whereas Albert Okwuegbunam can be a little bit more of a matchup guy, even if he doesn't wind up that way for this offense in Denver. But, to me, those are examples of a difference of someone who can like run routes and beat guys one-on-one, and they don't have to go, let's run a throwback play action pass to a wide open, Fant in the middle of the field, or a play action, or an RPO to a guy, as opposed to, or a tight end screen. Those are things that I used to see over and over with Fant as a scheme player, as opposed to Travis Kelce. You're going to match him up against whoever, whether it's the top cornerback, the top safety, top linebacker. And yeah, you'll give him some of those plays that Fant gets, but you also say it's 3rd and 12 and I need a first down. And yes, Patrick Peterson is on Travis Kelce. I'm still targeting him. And to me, Sammy Watkins is the closest player to that they have, in terms of still has something left if healthy. Now we'll wonder if he's held together by duct tape, but if he's healthy enough, he still has that skill. He torched Jalen Ramsey a few years ago when Tyreek Hill came out of the game in Jacksonville and had I think he had 150, 160 yard day and 3 touchdowns in that game, when they just put Jalen Ramsey on him, and he just had his way with Ramsey in that game. So that's the kind of thing about Watkins, is that, back then we were drafting him more as a mid-round guy, round 10, right. Round 8, round 10.
Now he's a waiver wire speed dial guy. That's what Albert says in the chat room. Watkins will have a good game in week 1. People will rush to the waiver wire to get him because very few people are going to draft him.
Right.
And then we shall see. By the way, just super quick, and then we'll move on because it is a Broncos show. But Andy and Renee says might be more Jones out of the backfield. Something we discussed last week when we talked about top 5 ADPs that are wrong. And, well, the Green Bay backfield ADPs are wrong because Jones might be a little bit too high and Dillon might be a little bit too low. Yes. And again, we're looking at a Green Bay offense that just might be different. That just might go, you know what? Let's protect Rodgers, maybe unleash him in the postseason, and don't play rope-a-dope. You got rope-a-doped by the 49ers last year. It's like, hey, we'll just keep it close, right? And we can have Rodgers win it in the end. Oh, my God, we didn't win it in the end. So, maybe those running backs get a little bit more work there as well. And, Matt, before we move on, I think that's part of the conversation too.
Oh, I think it's absolutely part of the conversation. I mean, this is probably one of the more fluid situations right now because we haven't seen who's going to really be the defined guys in Green Bay. And, certainly Rodgers, to me, I have him at about 50, similar receptions to what he had last year, about 438 yards, 4 touchdowns, 56 receptions. Dillon's a good receiver out of the backfield in his own right. And so to me, I think that there's a real good chance that there's a real split here. to me, the points of where like the leverage points for this team are going to come down to is Tanyan back and healthy and ready to go early. Amari Rodgers is the buzz true enough for him to become that versatile guy, because then you're looking at somewhere between 500 and 800 yards out of him as kind of that midline range of what you can expect. And then Sammy Watkins. If Sammy Watkins can play more than 12 games, then I haven't projected at about 600 yards and 4 touchdowns. But if he can play 14, 16 games, you're looking at a 1,000-yard player. You're looking at maybe a 1,200-yard player. And then you're looking at him as kind of like that blip of a Brandon Lloyd season that Brandon Lloyd had in Denver, an ultra talent who never just seemed to be able to put it together for different reasons, but massive talent when he was on the field and had the opportunities.
All right. Spencer says, looks like 97 miles an hour is perfect speed to style your hair. Actually, when I ride a motorcycle, I'm like 80 is like the perfect speed. It is, because 55 is too slow, 65 is too slow. 80 is like perfect.
Hey, that's average traffic in Atlanta right outside my back door here. So
there you go. Yeah. And this was actually top down in the Jeep. So there you go. Yeah, just let it fly, everybody. Let it fly. It is a Broncos show. And as promised, we are going to talk about Tim Patrick. Now, there was an article yesterday of Footballguys on our newswire. So make sure everybody check it out and love it forever and subscribe to our free daily newsletter every morning. All the top stories right into your inbox. It is our Footballguys daily newsletter. It's free. The comments are written by me, Sigmund Bloom, and Joe Bryant. That is a hell of a trio. Sorry, Joe. But Tim Patrick, Ian St. Clair, he's a friend of mine, works for Mile High Report. He wrote that he would have a monster season. And I like Ian. I've been on Ian's show a couple of times. I would not say monster season for Tim Patrick. Can't reveal too much based on what we've seen out of practice. But I'll say this. Tim Patrick catches everything thrown his way. I don't think, and this is me, just conjecture, right? I don't think there's anything designed for Tim Patrick. I know there is for Cortland Sutton, or I would guess, Lassie Bark, guess that things are designed for Cortland Sutton. I would guess that things are designed for KJ Hamler. I would guess there's some for Jerry Jeudy, and that literally is a guess, Matt, because Jeudy didn't practice. I was at every day of open practice, OTAs, and mandatory minicamp, and I saw very, very little of Jerry Jeudy. So Judy's kind of the fly in the ointment, X factor, or whatever you want to call it here in this conversation. Could Tim Patrick be a breakout? Yeah. But I could also see Russell Wilson throwing for 4,000 yards and 35 touchdowns and not having a single 1,000-yard receiver. He'd have multiple 900-yard guys, okay? And I do believe Sutton is his favorite. I've witnessed it. I've reported it. Like, Cortland Sutton is his favorite, everybody. I keep seeing people bring up Jerry Jeudy. I'm putting my money on Jerry Jeudy. Well, you must like losing your money because, one, he's not been practicing, and two, I'm not sure how they're going to use him yet. Now, during training camp, and I'll be out there every day, during training camp, if that changes, then I'll let everybody know. But as of right now, stuff's designed for Sutton. At least I think it looks like that. Lassie Bark. Timmy Pats just catches what's thrown his way. I don't really think there's a package of plays for Timmy Pats. There's stuff for Dulcich when he's healthy. Okwuegbunam, as you mentioned. Tim Patrick is a hell of a receiver, and I'll probably talk to Ian about this eventually. I'm like, to say he's going to have a monster season. I mean, monster to me is like you're approaching 1,500, you're pushing past 1,500, and there's no way in hell Tim Patrick is going to do that. So I think we need to alert fantasy GMs as to, well, where's the right place to take a Tim Patrick? Because if you look at the ADP for Broncos receivers right now, Timmy Pats is wide receiver 67, 1409. You can get him right around Corey Davis, Jahan Dotson, Robbie Anderson, louder with Crowder. There's Jamison Crowder, Jameson Williams, just a little bit above him. So is Kenny Galladay. Marcus Valdes-Scantling, we can discuss. We'll do that a little bit later. But I look at that, and then I look at where everyone's drafting Sutton and Jeudy, and Judy's ahead of Sutton. it's not by much. Wide receiver 31, 701 for Judy, and then wide receiver 34, 706 for Sutton. So Sutton is a tremendous value. Maybe he should be the breakout, but I'm just bringing up Timmy Pats because my good friend Ian St. Clair wrote about Tim Patrick having a monster season. And as I wrote in our newsletter, I'm like, well, he's really good. He catches everything, but monster is it's a special type of level. And I don't think he gets there.
Well, here's some common sense that sometimes gets missed with people watching practice who may not have jobs, in different situations, or may not have had a lot of experience in life, or maybe they have and it's just missed on them. But here's the deal. When a player who is one of the main players is absent from practice, are you really going to run the plays that are meant for him? Are you going to spend a lot of time on those plays? Probably not, because they know those are designed for Jerry Jeudy. So we're not going to focus on that. We're going to focus on the things with the people that we have where they are, and I almost got hit by lightning last night. So there you go. But
you have been fly fishing. So
I have been fly fishing, and we've had a lot of thunderstorms here out in Georgia. I've been taking some photos of stuff and putting them on Twitter. So, it's gotten kind of close, but I would say that, for those who are high on Jeudy or higher on Jeudy than Sutton, that the defense could be, well, they're not focusing on Jeudy in camp because he's not there. So the things that you're seeing that are the focus are, let's refine the things with the people that we have. The game plan type of stuff that we have in terms with people like Hamler, in terms of, with Sutton, and that type of thing, with Patrick, obviously. But for me, I'm with you. Like, Cortland Sutton is a 1,200-yard receiver to me this year. I think he's easily the top receiver, and he's in my top. I think he's in my top 15 among wide receivers this year, in my rankings, and really closer to the top 12 in terms of his production. I don't see how you look at him, and to me, he's a better player overall than DK Metcalf. It's just about what Metcalf does with his strengths, and having Lockett opposite him to be able to really unlock. Now, is Jerry Jeudy Tyler Lockett? I don't think so, not yet, and I don't think he ever will be. But I think he can be more of a Reggie Wayne type of player, which is still very good in terms of like an overall route runner and technician. But to me, I have Sutton at 1,200 yards. I have Jeudy at 825, and touchdowns almost 2-1 for Sutton, in terms of where I'm rating them right now. Patrick, listen, I've always been a fan of Patrick, and whenever I go on Christopher Harris's Waiver Wire show during the year, the joke is that I often bring up Tim Patrick, and he's like, I don't like Tim Patrick. And then the next week he's recommending Tim Patrick, in his list, when I go back to tune in, and then I want to troll him and laugh about it. But Patrick is very good. He's a scheme player. A scheme player as well, but he does very well on the corner routes, as you know, Cecil, the sail routes. He will work back to the ball well, work him up the boundary, and he does well on the back shoulder and things like that. And that gives you, a player that can help bail out Russell Wilson. He's going to be a guy that can work well into the zones, but that means he's your third read. He's your fourth read. He might be your fifth read in some cases. So that's the, that's the thing with him. Like, I have Patrick somewhere in the neighborhood of 300-400 yards. And the only reason he gets more is if Jeudy gets hurt, Sutton gets hurt. And then you get a guy who can run enough of the timing routes that you need, that he can be a nice injury substitute. Maybe he's like a borderline starter for other teams that aren't that great. Like, if he were in Atlanta, I'd feel a lot better about Tim Patrick as a fantasy potential breakout guy, because, there's not much outside of Kyle Pitts in Atlanta that's proven.
Right. So there you have it. It is the Audible Live. It's Cecil Lammey and Matt Waldman. We're going through top 5 underrated receivers ready to break out. I can't remember what I titled the show. I think it was Breakout Wide Receivers. Top 5 breakout wide receivers. And I want to know honestly, and I will sit back with reservations, and I will be quiet somewhat. Some people wish I would be quiet more often, but either way, Matt, Is Mecole Hardman actually going to be a thing this year? When you look at this offense, and I don't think there's a one-to-one replacement for Tyreek Hill. I just don't. The things that Hill is able to do are unique and different from what anyone else can do. And that even includes a speed guy like Mecole Hardman. If you've listened to this show, you regularly hear me say, usually during the waiver wire show, after Hardman has like a 3 for 60 game and a touchdown maybe, and everyone's rushing to the waiver wire, I'm like, stop trying to make Mecole Hardman a thing. But I will ask you, and I will genuflect, and I will be reserved because I'm genuinely curious. Is this year finally the year where Mecole Hardman is a thing?
Well, I worked at Georgia, and I think that anytime someone sees a Georgia guy, they think I'm a fan of Mecole Hardman. I was never a fan of Mecole Hardman. I think if anything, he was a great special teamer who you could scheme up certain plays if you got the ball in his hands in space, and he did well. But when you asked him to do things like adjust to the football, run the right route in terms of depth, being able to make plays that are difficult, that separate you from being just a high-end athlete that they hope they can scheme into the right spot without him having to do anything special. I didn't see it, and I don't see it now. I think this could be one of his better seasons, but to me, that's like bordering on 700 yards, not even getting 5 touchdowns, because I think this is the year that, yes, Patrick Mahomes has to spread it out more. Obviously, Kelsey's going to get his. If you're not projecting 1,200 yards for Travis Kelce, you're probably off track for him. I mean, I think that's going to happen. But they drafted Sky Moore, and while I don't see Sky Moore because he's a rookie having a massive impact year one, he is better than Mecole Hardman already at positioning himself on routes. You can use him at on the perimeter, and he can win and get separation and run a good route. He's very good after the catch. He has that great burst. So to me, between Sky Moore, Juju Smith-Schuster, who also is very good in the middle of the field when he's healthy, he to me is kind of what we're going to see from David Bell in Cleveland, like a guy who can work up the seams, has good burst, runs decent routes, really knows how to get open and be friendly to your quarterback. And I mean, he worked with a quarterback who needed friendly receivers for a long time in Ben Roethlisberger, because Ben could prolong plays. Even at at the age that he was at, you could still see him prolonging some plays, and Juju Smith-Schuster does a good job of that. So to me, Smith-Schuster's the receiving leader of the wide receivers. Sky Moore, to me, Hardman is right now might be the second most productive guy on paper, in theory, but to me, 676 yards and 4 touchdowns is like bye week territory. That's not really like a guy that I don't think the upside's there. The upside is on everybody else. And everybody else to me is Sky Moore and Justin Ross. I'm a big Justin Ross fan, and I believe that while I only have Justin Ross at about 174 yards and a touchdown in terms of my projections, I believe if there's a player who could arise fast in training camp and as the season goes along, the guy who I would start subtracting yardage from other players like Hardman, Josh Gordon,
MVS is a fast learner, according to Pat Mahomes.
Marcus
Valdes-Scantling is a fast learner. Okay. Justin Ross might do one of two things: blow up in preseason, then everybody loves him.
Right.
Or do enough to make the team, which he will, because there's no way they can sneak him to the practice squad. Too many people in the league know about him. And then, let's say week 17, hey, let the kid play. And then he has 150. Well, what'd you project him for? 178? He has that in one game in week 17. You know what I mean? Probably against the Broncos.
That's what you're looking for. But the thing with Scantling is that I love that all the stories are about things that he does that have nothing to do with really what happens on Sunday, because it's always been, he's been reading leadership books and asked Aaron Rodgers for for books on how to, on self-improvement and leadership. And in practice, he's like the practice squad. Everyone's in love with him during practice. And then when the lights come on, the routes, the hands just don't seem to happen for him. He either's not getting open or he's not catching the ball. And it's kind of what like happened with Brian Edwards last year or the past 2 years, where practice is great. He reminds me of T.O., says John Gruden, who worked with T.O., and then next thing you know, it's like he's just not getting open. And for me, I have Scantling at about 400 yards. To me, Mahomes is going to have a down year by his standards, which means it'll still be a little better than Russell Wilson, possibly 4,600 yards, 30 touchdowns. Maybe Russ has more touchdowns, and I think he probably will. Pat will have more yards because they're probably playing more catch up this year because they don't have Tyreek Hill. But the receiving core, beyond Smith-Schuster, the rest of these guys, if I'm going to make a bet, it's probably going to be on Sky Moore just as a late round shot. And the rest of these guys, Hardman is a guy that if you take him early, take him with the idea that he produces well, trade him before the wheels fall off. Or Marcus Valdes-Scantling, take him for what he's worth and know that if it doesn't work out early, you can get rid of them because their value isn't that high.
Well, I was talking about windows. In the offseason, it's drum beats, and that's what we're going through, some of the drum beats from the Newswire. In the regular season, it's about windows. If I reluctantly get Mecole Hardman on my team, and for that window, I can start him a couple of times, it's like a what the heck flex, and it works, good, and then I'll dump his ass. Like, fine. Yeah. Move on, right? Move on. By the way, I think Aaron way early, you want a spoiler alert for this show? Earlier in this chat, I think he guessed most of our 5 breakout potential wide receivers today, but it's fun. It's fun, and
he knows them better than I do. I have no idea who we're talking about today.
Well, and the thing is like I don't pay a lot of attention to what other analysts say. Obviously, listen to what you say and Sigmund, of course, and doing the show together and all those sorts of things. But just in my general observations, and I may be way off on this, so maybe I'm talking out of my ass. Sorry, Joe. Is that I think there's a lot of groupthink, because of the Gabriel Davis thing, right? Next man up. Like, okay, there's some of that, and there's some of that opportunity. But let's talk schematics. Let's look at this, overall for everybody. I know we have people in the chat room that are wanting to hear us talk about Gabe Davis. So let's revisit that just briefly, because we brought it up a little bit earlier, Matt, and how and where Gabriel Davis should be drafted for Fantasy GMs. Now, this season, Gabriel Davis is at wide receiver 35. He's at 801. He's right behind Cortland Sutton, right in front of Tyler Lockett. This is also behind Robert Woods, who I think is a little bit low. Marquise Brown, who's at wide receiver 32. I think it's a little bit low. Jerry Jeudy, way too high at wide receiver 31. My opinion. Elijah Moore at wide receiver 30. So this is the group of wide receivers where you can get Gabe Davis. And you go, Buffalo, great offense, explosions abound for everybody. And Gabe Davis has talent. He's been one of those reserves. We've been waiting for him to get a larger opportunity there. He does now this season, but his ADP at around wide receiver 35. What do you think of where Gabriel Davis is getting drafted now? Because the groupthink that I see, the hype is, legitimate, certainly hyped, maybe even quite overhyped, Matt. But let's talk about the realistic spot and landing spot in your leagues where you can get Gabriel Davis.
Well, I think his ADP is a reflection of where I think it's a fair spot to draft him. I just think that the hype and the expectations that people attach to where he is they're valuing him differently than
aren't you drafting him at your ceiling, at his ceiling?
That's exactly it. That's the exact point, is that I think that's his absolute ceiling, is that 960, 980 yards, 7 touchdown kind of range. But you have to remember something, that, Gabriel Davis was on the field, and while he had some production, while Emmanuel Sanders was not, was banged up, he was still the third option in this offense. And And when I'm talking third option, he is still more of a schemed player too, as opposed to a matchup player. They use him in the slot. They use him on long developing routes. And when Stephon Diggs doesn't come open and or Dawson Knox doesn't come open, then you look towards Davis. Davis is that deep over route, the
now
deep
throwing
seam
James
route,
Cook,
the deep comeback. Now throw in James Cook. Exactly. Reading
is
my
that kid
mind,
going to get
baby.
40 catches this year? Is he going to get more?
I think he's going to get 50 catches this year.
I was going to say 50, but I didn't want to be too bold. But
no,
James Cook is the weapon.
Yeah.
He's the weapon that they'll use. Now, Singletary will get his. Fortunately, they still don't like him as much as I like him, Matt. But still, James Cook is in this discussion for everyone, like the Gabe Davis truthers. I always love when people put truther stuff on it, and I'm like, whatever. But yes, Gabe Davis is good. He's really good. James Cook is somebody you design plays for.
Yeah.
Back to that.
Yeah, and especially because here's the thing, your offense becomes more multiple, meaning that when you line up at the line of scrimmage with, say, an 11 personnel look, or say a 20 personnel look with two backs in the backfield, and then you 21. Let Josh Allen look at the defense and say, all right, here's what we see. I'm going to motion or shift a player out to see if we can get a good matchup. Oh, let's motion this player across. They're playing this type of zone. I'm going to now shift James Cook out against this linebacker, and he's going to run an over route against this linebacker. And he's going to.
This game's about two things. And I'm sorry, Matt, but this gets me so excited. This game is about two things. It's about influence, and declaration.
Yeah.
Okay. We just had Independence Day. So the declaration is we're declaring heavy. Yeah. We're declaring two backs. So a team traditionally is going to be like, oh, they're two backs. That's heavy. They might even go 22, dude. They might go two backs, two tight ends. Yep. But it's not.
Howard,
it's not. You're going to declare heavy. You're going to influence the defense. And then you're going to motion James Cook out.
Yeah.
Right? So declaration and influence, that's what this game is built on.
And when you have, and you have to remember too, that when you have OJ Howard and Tommy Sweeney, who are good blockers as second tight ends, they may not be fantasy relevant to you, but where they're relevant fantasy wise to other players is that you can go 22. You can go, two tight end personnel and split Dawson Knox out as that receiver. Dawson Knox is that second receiver in this offense. I repeat, he's the second option. He's the one that wins one-on-one matchups down the field. He's the one that makes the difficult grabs. He's the one they look to. In that Chiefs game where Davis blew up, again, the Chiefs were like, we're going to let you beat us if you can find Gabriel Davis. Because we're betting that we could reach you before you could reach him as it has his third read, and they lost on that. And I understand why they did it. I mean, you don't want Diggs to kill you, because if Diggs gets the ball in his hands, he makes one guy miss and he's gone. If Knox is a matchup nightmare for safeties and linebackers, and he can beat some defensive backs. He was on Feldman's freaks list before anyone ever knew who he was back at Ole Miss, and his tape was great. And so, and I like Khalil Shakir as a long-term guy, and Crowder is a reliable guy too. So those guys also kind of feed into what Davis is, because Davis needs time. Davis is one of those guys that you need him breaking with momentum across the field to catch the ball. Cook is one of those guys that you get him into a little bit of space, he's going to make two people miss, and then that speed comes. And he's also a decent runner as well. So they want to flex him and move him around. Cook was excited about coming here. That tells you he's looked at this scheme and goes, I fit here. They're going to make the most out of me, or that's his hope. And I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, fit. It's a dirty, filthy word in the NFL, but it's truly what you need to look for. That fit is there. Waffles, by the way. Waffles, I wish our YouTube overlords wouldn't hold us down, because, yes, Gabriel Davis is a viral badge. That's for sure.
Or a bandage.
Yeah, something. I still got my Gabriel Davis decorations up. Anyway, let's move on from that. I want to talk about KJ Osborn. I want to look at this because, okay, it's going to come down to Kirk Cousins. Maybe we shouldn't look at KJ Osborn, but either way,
I'm okay with it.
I look at Kevin O'Connell, right? I look at O'Connell and I go, what is it like? Oh God, I could totally, I could get in a lot of trouble with this take, Matt, but let's just say you're in a situation.
It's a bad. I'm the bad influence.
You're in a situation at work and you're like not happy. And then imagine if you were made happy. What would that do to your production? What would that do to your work? Look at Kevin O'Connell. And I respect the hell out of Kevin O'Connell. Can't say that I know him a little bit, but I know enough coaches around him to kind of have a good feel for him as a coach and as an influencer. There's influence again. I'm not talking about Instagram, but I look at this offense and I go, all right, we already know Justin Jefferson's the bomb. Adam Thielen, where's he going in his career? That's a question mark. KJ Osborn has always been good. He's like the Minnesota version of Tim Patrick, right? Built differently, certainly, different skill set, certainly. But Osborn's, when someone says Osborn, old dogs like you and I are just like, yep, love them in college, and then now it might actually be there because when you look at how this offense could be so much different, so much more explosive, and Kirk Cousins, the king of the compilers, now actually, he gets that opportunity to run an explosive system. And by the way, the system that he's most comfortable in, it's the Shanahan system. With a lemon twist, and that is Kevin O'Connell and his influence. So I look at KJ Osborn and I think, breakout. Maybe not breakout as much as others on this list could break out, but certainly more there than some are expecting. Now I'm going to look at his average draft position because that's something that we've been bringing up frequently on this show. So Osborn right now, unless I misspelled it, he's not getting drafted at all. You're telling me a guy that's not even get drafted at all? You're drafting Robbie Anderson, people. What's the matter with you? And KJ Osborn's left out there in the cold. I'm double and triple checking, make sure I didn't miss him. No, KJ Osborn's not getting drafted in 12-team PPR. That's a mistake. So let's help maybe correct that mistake, Matt.
If I was able to make a prop bet that said I could win by betting on KJ Osborn to outproduce either Gabriel Davis or Mecole Hardman, I would make that bet because I think he'll outproduce one of those guys by year's end. I have Osborn at close to 600 yards and 6 touchdowns in this offense, getting about 72 targets. And I like Adam Thielen in this offense. I think while Thielen hasn't been healthy lately, he scored more touchdowns in the past 2 years than he did in, I think, the first 4 or 6, or the same amount as he did in the first 6 years that he played. So he's been a red zone weapon when he's on the field, and they rely on him. But Osborn's that guy who's, he was kind of that athlete. When they recruit guys at a school and they say he's an athlete, that means he can catch, he can run. He probably played running back. We probably don't want him as a running back. We're gonna work him at receiver, and he's a good special teams guy. He's very good in the open field, and what we saw last year was his ability to go up and win the football. He had a very strong catch radius, did a great job in tight coverage to win targets. He showed some ability to work with Kirk Cousins and find his way to get open and understand the scheme. And, I know that a lot of people love Irv Smith, and they're waiting for the Irv Smith train to happen. And, listen, I got him at 600 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's great. But there's, to me, Kirk Cousins is a 4,300 yard, 30 plus touchdown player in this offense. And they want to use Dalvin Cook more as a receiver. They plan on splitting him out and all that stuff like that. And that's fine. But if they spread it out, you're looking at, probably mix and match with your third option. And that means that if you were to say that the Vikings are that type of team that if they had, you could say there's 3 great options. And there's potentially three guys who could give you 1,000 yards. That third guy would be the combination of Cook, Osborn, and Smith together. Now they're broken out, and it's just going to depend on the game. But if Thielen stays hurt, can't stay healthy and gets hurt, then Osborn is that guy that you can start adding, production to, maybe 50 yards per game more than what he had, or, and now you're looking at him as an 800 or 900 yard option. So, Davis may be better than Osborn, but the way that he's used is comparable. And that's really the point, is about how you use guys. Because again, Nick Chubb is probably the best running back in this league, but the way he's used, he's split with Kareem Hunt. So you could sit there and talk about who's better, but who's going to be used in a way where they can maximize their skills. And I think there's a worthwhile debate to say that Gabriel Davis isn't going to be used as the second option, because even Emmanuel Sanders wasn't the second option. And I'm sorry, but Emmanuel Sanders was a better player than Gabriel Davis as a route runner, a pass catcher, better speed. He just wasn't as big. And that's about it. And he couldn't stay healthy. But don't be surprised if Emmanuel Sanders is in Tampa Bay by the beginning of the year and performing as well as Gabriel Davis by year's end, if they really need receiving talent there.
It is the Audible Live. Cecil, Lammey, and Matt Waldman talking about those breakout wide receivers. As we wrap up today's show, and I get your final thoughts, Matt, Michael Thomas was running routes. Now, some of the memes that have come from that video are kind of funny, but when I look at Michael Thomas, I think all of us, as someone who's stuck in the 90s, and I always used to make fun of the dudes that were stuck in the 80s, right? That would show up in the Camaro at the party and be like, "Hey guys, I'm still cool," and you're like, "Ha, get out of here. We're listening to Pearl Jam or whatever." Like, okay, I'm stuck in the 90s, but I think people get stuck in the past with like, well, we brought it up with the Chiefs offense. Things are going to look different. With the Packers offense, things are going to look different. Know that teams can choose to attack things differently. And the key to today's game, besides declaration and influence, is also defensively how to stop someone -1. You're always going to be -1 because everyone's dropping 8. Everyone drops 8. It's the trendy thing. It's new. It's hip. It's your, badge, whatever Waffles was talking about, right? Like, it's, I guess still got my badge up, my decorations. Like, okay. But dropping 8 is what everybody does. So defenses are going to learn how to, do that and work well and trying to stop the run -1, meaning 3 men on the line of scrimmage, basically dedicated to making sure the running back doesn't get by him. How do offenses adjust to that? Remember, the adjustment, you're adjusting to the adjustment. Everyone's going -1 now. Everyone's dropping 8. Now offenses, it's your turn. And what is that? That is James Cook, if we're talking Buffalo. If we're talking Green Bay, that could just be more A.J. Dillon. You want to ISO on A.J. Dillon as a receiver in the flat? That's what you want to do? I love getting into car crashes. Like, I don't mean to be joyful, or make fun of like.
And tackling so good in the NFL with smaller linebackers and safeties trying to play linebacker.
So things are going to be different in Green Bay. In Kansas City, stop trying to make Clyde Edwards-Helaire thing. Like, okay, like that's just going to be different in Kansas City. And I think with Michael Thomas, look at his average draft position right now. And I wrote about this for our newswire at Footballguys. Wide receiver 19, 4'11". Now it's right before Chris Godwin, and DJ Moore. And it's right after Terry McLaurin, directly after Terry McLaurin. I was like, I know McLaurin's catching passes from Carson Wentz, but still, that is a well-paid and well-compensated Terry McLaurin, super happy, super productive. Or Michael Thomas. Okay, we hope that he's healthy forever and ever and ever, but he's played 7 games in the last 2 years. And a video of him running has made his ADP jump into the top 20. So again, final thoughts. It's not a breakout because we've already seen Michael Thomas break out. but I think it's one of the hottest topics of discussion because who needs another Baker Mayfield video? Baker Mayfield's not going to do much of anything, okay? If you're mining for fantasy gold in Carolina, it's going to be a fool's gold. But either way, let's talk about Michael Thomas to wrap up today's show.
Well, I'm a huge fan of his skills, but I don't know how you project that. It's like magical thinking in the idea that he's just suddenly going to be healthy. Now, it may happen, but until we see that, it's kind of like, it's just a hope that you just think he's automatically, we know that he'll automatically be good if he's healthy enough to play. I mean, like, stay healthy. But, that's the big if to me. I have him at 12 games right now. And he still is a target leader, but I have him at about 875 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's a big drop from where he was when he was in his prime production years. Now, I hope to add to that with good news, but let's remember Jarvis Landry, while, not Michael Thomas, is still a very good football player who is capable of giving you that 700 to 900 yard range of value. Chris Olave is the top receiver in this class, if you ask me. And I think he's capable of being the most productive receiver of this rookie class in year one.
See, look at this. This is like a movie, Matt. We come together at the end of the show, right? We're separate on Allen Lazard, and then we come together on Chris Olave. It's chef's kiss.
I have him at 781 yards and 5 touchdowns, and that's based on
the first half of the season,
right? But that's based on that's based on just feeling out where they're going here, in terms of this. But I think Jameis Winston's really the guy to talk about, and we'll do that down the line, because I was really impressed with how much he improved last year on film. Maybe not in the production standpoint, but Olave to me is that guy who you can match him up in multiple spots. He's an excellent route runner. He reminds me a lot of Chad Johnson in terms of the smooth route running. He can pretty much do everything for you. He made the more difficult catches and the more difficult tracking plays than what we saw out of Garrett Wilson. I like Garrett Wilson.
Right.
But to me, this is a Robert Woods, Marquise Lee type of situation, both on the same team.
Right.
People hype Lee for the athletic and the playground moves. And then Lee needed a little more work, and it was Woods who was more the refined guy in the background. And then Big Play Bob showed up with the Rams, and nobody's talking about Marquise Lee. Well, because Lee's out of the league right now, but it's
with Garrett, I don't think Garrett's a one-trick pony. That'd be insulting for him to say that, but it's his speed. So everyone's like, speed. It's like, okay, well, with Olave, you get CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah. You get a lot.
You want CeeDee Lamb? Who wants CeeDee Lamb? I do.
I always want CeeDee Lamb. Yeah. Yes. And so with those 3 options and a healthy Jameis, I think that you could see where they have 3 guys who could be 800, 900 yard players and propel 4,000 yard production out of Winston, with the help of other players, because Traquan Smith has his role. Marquez Callaway has his role. The tight ends can do something. I think Troutman is still a guy to keep an eye on late as just as a waiver wire speed dial type of player. But those, they basically got 4 or 5 options in that offense, along with Kamara, obviously, if Kamara is playing, to be able to propel this offense. Thomas, I just look at it this way. People are drafting Thomas they're hoping for Thomas to be what he was. Right. It could happen, but right now you're making a big gamble on a player who we don't know yet if he's there.
And you're making that gamble at wide receiver 19.
Yeah, if you're doing it at 38, if you're doing it alongside Gabriel Davis, I'm okay with that. Or Mecole Hardman, I'm taking Michael Thomas.
Hey, I got Michael Thomas in the 10th round, everybody. Like, fine.
Yeah,
you're taking him in the 4th?
Yeah, no, you could running backs, top tight end, top quarterback. I mean, there's so many safe. Early round is for safe investments. Take safe investments. People go, well, I've missed on my pick because I picked Nick Chubb at 14 as the number 7 running back overall, and he was the number 12 running back. I thought he was going to be the number 1 running back. Listen, if you pick a guy in the first round, you're looking for high ceiling or high ceiling, high floor, the highest possible guys with the highest possible floors. And if they land at their starters, you pick starters and they play like starters, you won. It's in the late rounds, if you pick starters and you pick them as backups, you win even more. And it's like, keep it simple like that. If you're going to go, well, I'm going to pick him because I think he can be top 3, but he has a floor of being wide receiver 78. That's not a good that's not a good idea.
It's that spot in your league where some of the guys in your league stop paying attention. That's where you can win, but you don't win your league in the draft, except you have a draft every week. It's called the waiver wire.
You don't lose by picking well in the early rounds.
Right.
You win by picking well in the late rounds.
Yes, and working your waiver wire. So
yes. Trades when you're good at
it. Don't fall asleep at the wheel. Anyway, as Chris says in the chat room, hit the like button, sub, share, and comment. Do all those YouTube things. Make sure to follow Matt Waldman on Twitter at Matt Waldman. I am at Cecil Lammey. What do you got going the rest of this month? You got a little fly fishing in. You got
it's straight work now, baby.
Yeah, you're digging back into the RSP for next year.
I'm watching prospects. Just finished watching some Bijan Robinson, some Tank Bigsby. Tank is a little bit more of a Jeep than he is a tank, but he's a fun player to watch. Doing lots of gut checks and working on rankings and projections and things like that, and trying to grow my hair so I can be butthead to his Beavis or Beavis to his butt. I don't know which one.
I thought I looked more like a Racerhead today, which is
I think that works
strangest film.
But I just think I just know the internal commentary that we have going on that we don't really say is us going.
By the way, and you know how excited I am about this, and I cannot wait until it's available for everybody. But page 1 of Fake Booze.
Nice.
That's gonna be in the Rock's, gonna be in the Rock's hot little hands here in the month of July. Yes, that Rock. So when it's available for you all, that'll be interesting as well. So I'll keep you up to date on all that.
It'll be good, not interesting.
It'll be very good. Very, very good. Anyway, he's Matt Waldman. I'm Cecil Lammey. Sigmund Bloom's out there somewhere in the ether.
Happy
What's up, Bloom?
Belated birthday.
Belated birthday to our man, Sigmund Bloom. Everyone out there, be good. Please be good. Be a good person. Be kind. Be understanding. Be curious. And as always, stay tuned. And I demand that you stay frosty.